I never expected to discover my own family plotting against me while reviewing security footage from my apartment. But there I was at 2 in the morning, watching my parents secretly enter my home with a spare key I had trusted them with for emergencies only. My hands trembled as I witnessed my mother, Linda, measuring the dimensions of my spare bedroom, while my father, Robert, photographed every corner with his phone, both of them discussing in hushed voices how they planned to move my unemployed brother Jake into my space without my knowledge or consent. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife when I heard my mother's voice through the audio feed saying I was too selfish and needed to learn family responsibility, as if my hard work and independence were character flaws rather than achievements to be proud of. The footage revealed weeks of careful planning and deception. I realized these people who raised me, who taught me about honesty and respect, had been systematically violating my privacy and trust. My stomach churned as I watched them take measurements, knowing they were already making decisions about my life without including me in the conversation. The spare key I had given them was meant for genuine emergencies, not for secret invasions of my personal space to accommodate my brother's inability to support himself. Sitting in my home office chair, I felt the foundation of everything I believed about my family crumbling beneath me. These were the same people who had always emphasized the importance of communication and respect in our household. Yet here they were planning to ambush me with a fait accompli. The security camera had been installed after a break-and scare in my building just 2 months earlier, and now it was revealing something far more devastating than any stranger's intrusion. My mind raced through the implications. How long had they been planning this manipulation? What other decisions had they made about my life without my input? The trust I had built with my parents over 28 years of life felt suddenly fragile and questioned. I knew I needed to understand the full scope of their deception before deciding how to respond to this profound violation of my boundaries and independence. The next morning, I called in sick to work at the software development firm, where I had been building my career for 5 years. My manager understood thinking I was dealing with a family emergency, which was more accurate than he could have known. I spent the day reviewing every minute of security footage from the past month, discovering a pattern of unauthorized entries that made my blood run cold. My parents had been coming to my apartment regularly, sometimes together, sometimes separately, always using the emergency key I had entrusted them with. They brought measuring tapes, notebooks, and cameras documenting every detail of my living space, as if they were real estate agents preparing a listing. In one particularly disturbing clip, I watched my mother open my refrigerator and cabinets, making notes about storage space and kitchen accessibility. The violation felt personal and calculated. They had not stumbled into this decision impulsively, but had been methodically planning for weeks. Each visit revealed more preparation, more photography, more discussion about logistics and timing. I realized they had been treating my apartment like community property rather than the private residence I worked hard to afford. By evening, I had compiled a complete timeline of their intrusions. The pattern showed increasing frequency and boldness, with their most recent visit occurring just 3 days before I discovered the footage. They had spent over an hour in my apartment, moving furniture, slightly testing the water pressure in the guest bathroom, and even sitting on my couch while discussing the best approach to present their plan to me. The emotional impact was devastating. I had always prided myself on having a close relationship with my family, built on mutual respect and honest communication. Discovering this level of deception and manipulation shattered my understanding of who my parents actually were beneath the loving facade they presented to my face. I needed answers, but I also needed a strategy. Confronting them directly might lead to denial deflection or manipulation tactics I was not prepared to handle. Instead, I decided to investigate further to understand the complete scope of their plan before determining the best course of action. My trust had been broken, but my intelligence remained intact, and I was determined to uncover the full truth about what my family had been planning behind my back. The next phase of my investigation revealed something even more disturbing than unauthorized apartment visits. After calling several storage facilities in my neighborhood, I discovered that my parents had rented a 10 by 12-foot unit at Secure Space Storage, just 4 blocks from my building. When I drove there and spoke with the facility manager, she confirmed that a man matching my father's description had been making regular visits bringing boxes and furniture items over the past 3 weeks. My heart sank as I realized the scope of their deception extended far beyond simple apartment measurements. They had been actively preparing for Jake's move, creating a staging area for his belongings, while maintaining complete secrecy about their intentions. The storage unit rental required identification and payment, meaning they had made financial commitments to this plan without any guarantee of my cooperation. I decided to conduct surveillance of my own building to understand how deep this conspiracy reached. Parking across the street during lunch breaks and after work, I observed my parents making additional visits always, during hours when they knew I would be at the office. They had clearly studied my schedule, timing their intrusions to avoid detection, while systematically preparing for their ambush. The breakthrough came when I overheard a conversation between Jake and his friend Marcus outside a coffee shop near the university campus. Jake was bragging about his upcoming move to downtown, describing the amenities of my building and the convenience of the location. He spoke with confidence and excitement, as if the arrangement had been finalized and approved. Marcus asked about rent and responsibilities, and Jake laughed, saying his family was handling everything because they understood his temporary financial difficulties. Listening to my brother discuss my apartment as if it were his rightful inheritance filled me with rage and disbelief. He had no job, no savings, and no apparent plan for contributing to household expenses. Yet he spoke about moving into my space with the entitlement of someone who had earned the privilege through hard work and responsibility. The casual way he dismissed any concern about my consent revealed how little respect he had for my autonomy and independence. I followed Jake after he left the coffee shop, watching him visit an employment office where he spent less than 15 minutes before leaving without completing any applications. He then drove to a Best Buy, where he spent an hour looking at expensive electronics, checking prices on gaming systems and sound equipment that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His behavior suggested someone preparing to upgrade his lifestyle rather than someone genuinely seeking employment to improve his circumstances. That evening, I called my building manager, Sarah, to discuss apartment security policies. During our conversation, she mentioned that my parents had contacted her office several times over the past month, asking detailed questions about lease modifications, additional occupancy procedures, and guest policies. She had assumed I was considering having a roommate and had provided them with all the necessary paperwork and requirements. Sarah's revelation confirmed that my parents had been working systematically to circumvent proper procedures. They had researched the legal requirements for adding Jake to my lease, obtained the necessary forms, and positioned themselves to present the arrangement as a legitimate housing solution. The level of planning and preparation demonstrated that this was not a spontaneous family discussion, but a calculated campaign to manipulate my living situation. When I asked Sarah about the timeline of their inquiries, she checked her records and found that the first contact had occurred over 6 weeks earlier. This meant my parents had been planning Jake's move since before I had even installed the security cameras. The timing suggested they had been discussing this arrangement for months, possibly since Jake had lost his previous job at a local restaurant chain. I requested copies of all the paperwork my parents had requested, and Sarah provided me with lease modification forms, occupancy change requests, and detailed information about building policies regarding long-term guests. The documents revealed that my parents had obtained everything necessary to add Jake to my lease without requiring my signature until the final approval stage. They had been preparing to present me with a complete package, making refusal seem unreasonable and uncooperative. The investigation also revealed that my parents had been telling neighbors and building residents that I had approved Jake's move, but was too busy with work responsibilities to handle the administrative details personally. Mrs. Chen from the apartment next door mentioned that my mother had spoken with her about Jake's upcoming arrival, describing him as a temporary resident who would help with household maintenance and building security. This web of deception extended throughout my social network within the building. My parents had been creating a narrative that painted me as a willing participant in their plan, establishing expectations among neighbors and building staff that would make any opposition appear sudden and unreasonable. They had been manipulating the social environment to pressure me into compliance through community expectations and perceived commitments. By the end of my investigation, I understood that my parents had not simply violated my privacy, but had constructed an elaborate framework for controlling my living situation. They had researched legal requirements, prepared necessary documentation, arranged temporary storage, established community expectations, and coordinated with Jake's timeline, all while maintaining complete secrecy about their intentions. The level of coordination and deception required for this plan revealed a fundamental disrespect for my autonomy that went far beyond a simple family disagreement about housing arrangements. Determined to understand whether this manipulation was an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern, I decided to visit my grandmother Patricia at Sunset Manor Assisted Living. At 83 years old, she had always been the family historian, maintaining detailed records of family events and possessing a remarkable memory for dates, conversations, and relationship dynamics that others preferred to forget or reinterpret through rose-colored glasses. Patricia welcomed me with her usual warmth, offering homemade cookies and fresh coffee, while we settled into the comfortable sitting area of her private apartment. She immediately sensed my distress and encouraged me to share what was troubling me. When I described the security camera discovery and my parents' unauthorized apartment activities, her expression shifted from surprise to a knowing sadness that suggested this behavior was not unprecedented. After listening to my complete account, Patricia walked to her bedroom and returned with a wooden box filled with letters, photographs, and documents spanning several decades of family history. She explained that she had been documenting concerning patterns of behavior from my parents for years, initially hoping the issues would resolve naturally, but eventually recognizing the need to maintain detailed records for future reference and protection. The first document she showed me was a letter she had written to my father 15 years earlier, expressing concern about his attempts to control my sister Kelly's career decisions. According to Patricia's notes, my parents had convinced Kelly to decline a promotion opportunity at an advertising agency in Los Angeles because they believed the distance would weaken family bonds and expose her to negative influences from West Coast culture. Patricia's records revealed that my parents had contacted Kelly's employer, directly expressing concerns about her emotional stability and ability to handle increased responsibilities. They had suggested that Kelly was considering the promotion only because she felt pressured by colleagues rather than genuine career ambition. The employer, wanting to avoid potential complications, had quietly withdrawn the promotion offer without explaining the real reason to Kelly. The manipulation had been sophisticated and devastating. Kelly had interpreted the withdrawn offer as a professional rejection, leading to months of self-doubt and depression that my parents had used to reinforce their arguments about her need for family support and stability. They had created the very emotional crisis they claimed to be protecting her from, then positioned themselves as the solution to problems they had secretly created. Patricia then shared documentation about my Uncle Danny's financial relationship with my parents. Over the past decade, they had borrowed nearly $30,000 from him for various family emergencies and Jake's failed business ventures. Each loan had been accompanied by emotional appeals about family loyalty and temporary hardship, but Patricia's records showed that the repayment promises had never been fulfilled according to the original agreements. The pattern revealed systematic financial exploitation disguised as family mutual aid. My parents had borrowed money for Jake's food truck business, which failed within 6 months due to poor planning and management. They had requested additional funds for his community college tuition, which he had abandoned after 1 semester without completing any courses. Most recently, they had borrowed money for Jake's certification program in automotive repair, which he had never attended despite receiving full payment for registration and materials. Patricia's most shocking revelation concerned my relationship with Emma, my girlfriend of 2 years, who had ended our engagement 3 years earlier. According to documents Patricia had carefully preserved, my parents had contacted Emma's supervisor at the marketing internship she held during her final semester of college. They had expressed concerns about Emma's emotional demands on me and suggested that her career ambitions were creating unrealistic expectations that would interfere with my professional development. The conversation had been framed as loving concern from parents who wanted to protect both their son and his girlfriend from making relationship decisions based on immature understanding of long-term compatibility. My parents had suggested that Emma might benefit from focusing on her own career development without the complications of managing a serious relationship during such a formative professional period. Emma's supervisor, believing she was helping a young woman avoid potential career sabotage from relationship drama, had advised Emma to consider whether her personal life was creating distractions from her professional goals. The advice had planted seeds of doubt about our relationship compatibility that my parents had then reinforced through carefully timed conversations about my work demands and future career trajectory. Patricia showed me email printouts where my parents had discussed their strategy for encouraging Emma to end our relationship without appearing to interfere directly. They had planned to create situations where Emma would feel like an outsider during family gatherings, emphasizing my professional commitments and suggesting that my career development required flexibility and focus, that serious relationships could compromise. The revelation that my parents had systematically undermined my relationship with Emma was devastating. I had spent 3 years believing that our breakup resulted from natural incompatibilities and different life goals, never suspecting that my parents had been actively working to destroy the relationship through psychological manipulation and external pressure applied through her professional environment. Patricia's final disclosure concerned her own relationship with my parents. She revealed that they had been pressuring her to modify her will to ensure that her estate would be distributed according to their recommendations rather than her own preferences. They had suggested that her age made independent financial planning decisions risky, and that family input would provide necessary perspective on fair inheritance distribution. The conversation had been presented as loving concern for her welfare and family harmony, but Patricia recognized the manipulation tactics from observing their behavior with other family members. She had consulted with an estate planning attorney and established legal protections to prevent any unauthorized modifications to her financial arrangements. But the pressure campaign had continued through regular visits focused on family financial planning discussions. Understanding this historical pattern of manipulation and control helped me recognize that the apartment situation was not an isolated incident, but the latest example of my parents' systematic approach to managing family members' lives according to their preferences rather than individual autonomy. They had been using emotional manipulation, external pressure, and deceptive communication to control major life decisions for years, always justifying their interference as loving concern rather than acknowledging the controlling and damaging nature of their behavior. Armed with Patricia's revelations about long-term family manipulation patterns, I decided to investigate Jake's current situation more thoroughly. Rather than relying on secondhand information from family conversations, I wanted to understand his actual daily activities, financial situation, and genuine efforts toward employment and independence. What I discovered was far worse than unemployment and dependency. Following Jake discreetly over several days revealed a lifestyle completely inconsistent with someone experiencing genuine financial hardship or actively seeking employment opportunities. He frequented expensive coffee shops, purchased premium gasoline for his late-model sedan, and visited entertainment venues that required significant disposable income. His behavior suggested access to money sources that neither my parents nor legitimate employment could provide. The breakthrough came when I followed him to Riverboat Casino, a gambling establishment located 40 minutes outside the city. Jake spent over 4 hours there, moving confidently between poker tables and electronic gaming machines, with the familiarity of a regular customer. He engaged in conversations with dealers and other patrons who clearly recognized him, suggesting this was routine recreational activity rather than occasional entertainment. I positioned myself at a nearby restaurant within the casino complex, where I could observe Jake's gambling behavior while appearing to be a casual diner enjoying an evening meal. Through careful observation, I watched him place bets ranging from $50 to $200 per hand amounts that would be impossible for someone without steady income, unless he was using money obtained through deceptive or illegal means. During a break from gaming, Jake sat at the casino bar where he struck up a conversation with strangers about his living situation. I positioned myself close enough to overhear him bragging about his upcoming move to a luxury downtown apartment building, describing amenities like a fitness center rooftop deck and covered parking garage. He spoke about his rich brother in software development who understood family obligations and was providing housing support during his temporary career transition. The casual way Jake discussed my apartment and financial situation with strangers was deeply disturbing. He presented the arrangement as a generous gift rather than an unauthorized plan, speaking with the confidence of someone whose housing needs had been permanently resolved through family wealth rather than personal achievement. When another patron asked about his own career plans, Jake vaguely mentioned working in family business development, without providing specific details about responsibilities or timeline. I secretly recorded portions of his conversation using my smartphone, capturing his admissions about gambling frequency, his dismissive attitude toward employment searching, and his expectations about long-term financial support from family members. The recordings revealed someone who had no intention of achieving independence, but instead planned to exploit family relationships to maintain a lifestyle he had not earned through his own efforts. Further investigation revealed that Jake had been lying about attending therapy sessions for depression and anxiety. I called the counseling center he claimed to visit regularly and discovered that while he had scheduled an initial consultation 6 months earlier, he had canceled subsequent appointments and never established an ongoing therapeutic relationship. The fees my parents had been paying for his mental health treatment were being diverted to other purposes. I also discovered that Jake had been fabricating job interviews and employment applications. When I contacted several businesses where he claimed to have submitted applications and attended interviews, human resources departments confirmed that they had no record of any contact from someone matching his name and background. The elaborate stories he shared with family members about potential job opportunities and promising interviews were complete fiction designed to maintain the appearance of seeking employment. The most shocking discovery came when I accessed my credit report through the annual free monitoring service provided by federal law. Someone had attempted to open 3 different credit card accounts using my personal information, but listing my parents' address as the primary residence. The applications had been submitted over the past 2 months, coinciding with the timeline of my parents' apartment surveillance activities. While the credit applications had been denied due to address verification issues, the attempts revealed that someone with access to my personal information had been trying to establish unauthorized financial accounts. Given the timing and address information, the most likely explanation was that Jake had obtained my Social Security number and other identifying information from family records or conversations, then attempted to use my credit profile to support his gambling and lifestyle expenses. I contacted the fraud prevention departments of all 3 credit reporting agencies to place security alerts on my account and prevent any future unauthorized applications. The customer service representatives confirmed that the application attempts showed sophisticated knowledge of my personal information, including details about employment history and previous addresses that would typically only be available to family members or someone with access to private family documents. When I confronted this evidence with Patricia during a follow-up visit, she revealed additional concerns she had been hesitant to share during our initial conversation. She had noticed that small valuable items had been disappearing from her apartment during Jake's visits, including antique jewelry, collectible coins, and gift cards she had received for holidays and special occasions. Patricia had initially attributed the missing items to her own forgetfulness or misplacement due to age-related memory changes. However, the pattern had become too consistent to explain through natural causes, and she had begun discreetly marking the locations of valuable items to track whether they remained in place after Jake's visits. The tracking system confirmed that items were disappearing specifically following his presence in her apartment. The revelation that Jake had been stealing from our grandmother while accepting her emotional and financial support was the final confirmation that his behavior represented systematic exploitation rather than temporary hardship requiring family assistance. He had been using family members' love and concern to gain access to their resources, then violating their trust through theft and deception, while maintaining the facade of struggling with depression and unemployment. Understanding the full scope of Jake's manipulation and criminal behavior helped me realize that my parents were not just controlling family manipulators, but were themselves being victimized by his elaborate deception campaign. Their attempt to move him into my apartment represented their desperate attempt to solve problems they did not fully understand, using methods they had not properly evaluated to help someone who was actively exploiting their parental instincts and financial resources. With complete understanding of my family's deception network, I began planning a comprehensive confrontation that would expose all the lies simultaneously while protecting myself from further manipulation and financial exploitation. The approach needed to be carefully orchestrated to prevent denial, deflection, or retaliation, while ensuring that everyone involved understood the complete scope of the problems that required immediate resolution. I started by consulting with David Martinez, a family therapist recommended by my employee assistance program, to develop a strategic approach for managing the confrontational dinner I was planning. Dr. Martinez helped me understand the psychological dynamics of family manipulation and provided guidance on maintaining emotional control while presenting evidence that could trigger defensive or aggressive responses from family members who had invested significant time and energy in their deceptive schemes. The first step was securing my apartment and financial accounts against further unauthorized access. I contacted my building management company and requested an emergency lock change, citing security concerns related to unauthorized key distribution. The new locks were installed within 48 hours, and I received confirmation that the building staff had been notified that no family members were authorized to access my apartment, regardless of claimed emergencies or maintenance requirements. I also upgraded my security system to include motion-activated cameras in all common areas and sound recording capabilities that would document any future unauthorized entry attempts. The enhanced system sent real-time notifications to my smartphone whenever unusual activity occurred, ensuring that I would have immediate awareness of any attempted intrusions or surveillance activities. Financial security required coordinating with my bank to establish enhanced authentication procedures for all account access and transaction approvals. I changed all passwords, security questions, and contact information to prevent unauthorized access using personal details that Jake might have obtained from family conversations or documents. The bank also placed fraud alerts on all accounts and required in-person verification for any attempts to modify account ownership or add authorized users. Next, I began organizing the evidence I had collected into a comprehensive presentation that would demonstrate the scope and timeline of family manipulation without appearing vindictive or accusatory. Dr. Martinez emphasized the importance of presenting facts objectively while allowing family members to draw their own conclusions about the implications of their behavior patterns. The evidence package included printed photographs from security camera footage showing unauthorized apartment entries, time-stamped documentation of storage unit rental, and usage recordings of Jake's casino conversations, and gambling behavior credit report documentation showing fraudulent application attempts, and Patricia's historical records of family manipulation patterns spanning multiple years and relationships. I decided to organize a family dinner at a private dining room in a neutral restaurant location where the conversation could not be interrupted by household distractions or emotional manipulation tactics, like leaving the room or ending the gathering prematurely. The neutral location would also prevent my parents from feeling territorially defensive, while ensuring that all participants remained focused on the discussion rather than environmental control strategies. The invitation process required careful consideration to avoid alerting family members about the confrontational nature of the gathering. I contacted each person individually, explaining that I wanted to organize a special dinner to discuss important news about my future plans and relationship developments. The framing suggested positive announcements rather than conflict resolution, encouraging attendance while preventing defensive preparation. I invited my parents, Linda and Robert, my brother Jake, my sister Kelly, and my grandmother Patricia, emphasizing that the gathering was intended to strengthen family communication and address important decisions that affected everyone's future happiness and stability. I also extended an invitation to Emma, my former girlfriend, explaining that I had been reflecting on our relationship and wanted to address some unresolved questions in the presence of family members who cared about both of our well-being. Emma's inclusion served multiple strategic purposes. Her presence would provide an objective witness to family dynamics who had personal experience with my parents' manipulation tactics. Additionally, her testimony about the circumstances surrounding our breakup would demonstrate the long-term pattern of interference that extended beyond current housing and financial issues. Dr. Martinez agreed to attend the dinner as a neutral facilitator who could help manage emotional reactions and guide the conversation toward productive problem-solving rather than blame assignment or defensive arguing. His professional presence would lend credibility to the confrontation while providing therapeutic support for family members who might experience distress when confronted with evidence of their harmful behavior patterns. The final preparation step involved anticipating potential family reactions and developing contingency plans for various scenarios, including denial deflection, counter-accusations, emotional manipulation, or premature departure from the gathering. Dr. Martinez helped me practice maintaining calm, factual communication, regardless of emotional pressure tactics that family members might employ to avoid accountability. 2 days before the scheduled dinner, I received an urgent call from my building manager, Sarah, informing me that a moving company had contacted the building office, requesting access to my apartment for an early morning furniture delivery. The movers had authorization letters signed by my parents and a detailed list of items scheduled for transport to my spare bedroom, including a bed-frame dresser desk and multiple boxes of personal belongings. Sarah had called to confirm the arrangement because the timing seemed unusual for furniture delivery, and she wanted to verify that I had approved the early morning access time. The discovery that my parents had already scheduled movers for the day after our family dinner revealed that they had planned to present Jake's relocation as an accomplished fact rather than a proposal requiring my consent and approval. This final revelation confirmed that my family dinner confrontation was perfectly timed to prevent a housing ambush that would have been much more difficult to reverse after Jake's belongings had been physically relocated to my apartment. The moving company authorization demonstrated the complete scope of my parents' deception and their intention to manipulate me through fait accompli rather than honest family discussion about housing arrangements and financial responsibilities. I informed Sarah that the moving authorization was fraudulent and that no family members were permitted access to my apartment under any circumstances. I also requested building security presence during the time frame when the unauthorized move had been scheduled to ensure that my parents could not circumvent the canceled arrangements through alternative manipulation tactics or emotional pressure applied to building staff. The private dining room at Oakwood Restaurant provided the perfect neutral setting for what I knew would be the most difficult conversation of my life. I arrived early to arrange seating and test the small audio recording device I had brought to document the evening's revelations. Dr. Martinez arrived shortly after me, carrying a leather portfolio containing resources for family conflict resolution and therapeutic guidance materials that might be needed depending on how the confrontation developed. My family members arrived within 15 minutes of each other, creating the relaxed social atmosphere I had hoped to establish before transitioning into more serious discussions. Linda and Robert appeared confident and cheerful, clearly anticipating that the evening would provide an opportunity to announce Jake's housing arrangement as a positive family development. Jake seemed somewhat nervous but excited, occasionally checking his phone and making comments about upcoming changes in his life situation. Kelly arrived with obvious curiosity about the purpose of the gathering, having traveled from across town specifically for this family meeting. She had been excluded from most family discussions about Jake's situation, making her attendance particularly valuable as an objective witness to revelations she had not previously heard. Patricia appeared alert and determined, carrying a small handbag that I suspected contained additional documentation she might choose to share during the evening. Emma's arrival created the first moment of visible tension among family members. My parents exchanged quick glances with each other, clearly wondering why I had included my former girlfriend in what they expected to be a family-only discussion about housing arrangements. Jake appeared confused by her presence, while Kelly smiled warmly at Emma, remembering their positive relationship during the period when we had been engaged. After everyone had ordered dinner and settled into comfortable conversation about work weather and general life updates, I announced that I had important information to share that would affect everyone's understanding of recent family dynamics. I explained that Dr. Martinez was present as a neutral facilitator to help ensure productive communication and emotional support for anyone who might need professional guidance during difficult discussions. The first evidence I presented was the security camera footage from my apartment projected onto a small screen I had brought for the presentation. The room fell silent as family members watched themselves entering my apartment without permission, measuring rooms, taking photographs, and discussing plans for Jake's relocation without any indication that my consent had been obtained or even requested. Linda was the first to respond immediately, becoming defensive and arguing that parents had natural rights to be concerned about their children's living situations and that the emergency key had been provided for precisely these types of family coordination needs. She characterized their apartment surveillance as loving concern rather than privacy violation, suggesting that my reaction was unnecessarily dramatic and ungrateful for their parental involvement. Robert supported Linda's defense by emphasizing their financial support for my education and early career development, arguing that family assistance created mutual obligations that included housing flexibility during temporary hardships experienced by other family members. He presented Jake's unemployment as a short-term crisis requiring immediate family solidarity rather than a chronic pattern requiring individual accountability and responsibility. The second wave of evidence included documentation of the storage unit rental building management consultations and neighbor conversations where my parents had been creating false narratives about my approval for Jake's move. This evidence demonstrated systematic deception rather than spontaneous parental concern, making denial more difficult to maintain with credibility. Jake's reaction to this evidence was immediate anger directed toward me for conducting surveillance of family members and violating trust by recording private conversations and activities. He accused me of betraying family loyalty and prioritizing individual selfishness over collective family welfare, presenting himself as the victim of my investigative activities, rather than acknowledging his role in the deceptive housing scheme. The third revelation involved Jake's gambling activities, financial deception, and theft from Patricia. I played recordings of his casino conversations where he bragged about manipulating family members and described his upcoming move to my apartment as a permanent solution to his financial irresponsibility, rather than temporary assistance during legitimate hardship. This evidence created the first crack in my parents' defensive unity. Linda appeared shocked by the recording of Jake's casual dismissal of employment efforts and his obvious comfort with gambling significant amounts of money while claiming financial desperation. Robert's expression shifted from defensive anger to confused concern as he processed the implications of Jake's deceptive behavior. The climactic moment came when Jake, cornered by overwhelming evidence and feeling betrayed by my systematic investigation, lost emotional control and began shouting accusations at everyone present. In his rage, he revealed that he had been secretly recording conversations with our parents for months, collecting evidence of their manipulation tactics to use as blackmail material if they ever attempted to reduce financial support or establish boundaries around his behavior. Jake's confession about recording family conversations for potential blackmail use stunned everyone into silence. He had been treating family relationships as strategic opportunities for exploitation, rather than sources of emotional support and mutual care. The revelation demonstrated that his dependence was not temporary unemployment requiring assistance, but permanent parasitic behavior designed to avoid adult responsibilities through manipulation and threats. Linda broke down completely when Jake played portions of recordings where she and Robert discussed strategies for gaining access to my savings account through power of attorney manipulation during a fabricated family emergency they were planning to create. The recordings revealed that their concern about my financial independence was motivated by desire for control rather than protective parental instincts. Emma chose this moment to share her own experience with my parents' manipulation, describing how they had contacted her workplace supervisor with concerns about our relationship's impact on her career development. She explained how their interference had created professional pressure that influenced her decision to end our engagement, revealing another layer of family control that extended beyond current housing and financial issues. Patricia then shared her documentation of long-term family manipulation patterns, including financial exploitation of Uncle Danny career sabotage directed toward Kelly and her own experience with inheritance pressure. Her evidence demonstrated that the current crisis was part of a systematic approach to family control that had been operating for years without recognition or accountability. The overwhelming evidence created a moment of complete silence as family members processed the scope of deception and manipulation that had been operating within our relationships. Dr. Martinez guided the conversation toward acknowledgement of harmful patterns and discussion of necessary changes to rebuild trust and establish healthy boundaries going forward. The immediate aftermath of the evidence presentation created profound shifts in family dynamics as the reality of long-term manipulation patterns became impossible to deny or rationalize. Linda sat in stunned silence, occasionally wiping tears as she processed recordings of conversations she had forgotten, having now hearing her own voice engaged in planning and scheming that sounded foreign and disturbing when played back objectively. Robert struggled to maintain his defensive position as evidence accumulated beyond any reasonable explanation except systematic family control disguised as loving concern. When Dr. Martinez gently asked him to explain the difference between family support and family manipulation, he found himself unable to articulate a coherent distinction that justified their unauthorized apartment surveillance and deceptive building management communications. Jake's emotional explosion had revealed not only his parasitic approach to family relationships, but also his complete lack of remorse about exploiting people who genuinely cared about his welfare. His threat to use recorded conversations as blackmail material demonstrated that he viewed family bonds as leverage opportunities rather than sources of mutual love and support, requiring reciprocal respect and responsibility. Kelly was the first family member to speak after processing all the evidence expressing shock and disappointment about manipulation patterns she had never recognized, despite being personally affected by them. She revealed that she had been planning to move back to California for months, having finally recognized that her family relationships had become unhealthy sources of obligation and guilt, rather than supportive connections that enhanced her life satisfaction. Kelly's decision to relocate represented her independent recognition of family dysfunction that paralleled my own growing awareness of manipulation and control issues. She had been documenting financial requests and emotional pressure tactics for legal consultation purposes, anticipating the need to establish boundaries that might require professional support to maintain effectively against persistent family pressure. The revelation that Kelly had been planning her own escape from family manipulation created a moment of recognition between us about shared experiences we had never previously discussed. We had both been developing independent awareness of problematic family dynamics while feeling isolated in our concerns, not realizing that other family members were experiencing similar manipulation and developing their own protective strategies. Emma's presence during this family revelation proved more therapeutic than I had anticipated. She shared that she had spent 3 years believing our relationship had failed due to natural incompatibility and personal immaturity, never suspecting external interference from people she had trusted and respected. Learning the truth about my parents' workplace manipulation provided closure about relationship questions that had troubled her for years. More significantly, Emma revealed that she had never stopped caring about me and had been hoping for an opportunity to reconnect and explore whether our relationship could be rebuilt on a foundation of honest communication and mutual respect. She had avoided contacting me directly because she believed I had chosen family obligations over our partnership, not understanding that my parents had been actively working to eliminate her from my life. Patricia's contribution to the evening extended beyond historical documentation to active intervention in family dysfunction patterns. She announced that she had been secretly recording recent conversations with my parents about inheritance manipulation and financial pressure, collecting evidence for potential elder abuse intervention if their behavior continued to escalate toward more serious legal violations. Patricia's threat to involve authorities in elder abuse investigations created immediate awareness that family manipulation had legal consequences beyond personal relationship damage. She had consulted with an attorney specializing in family financial exploitation and learned that several of my parents' pressure tactics constituted actionable violations of laws protecting elderly individuals from financial coercion and inheritance manipulation. The legal implications of their behavior toward Patricia forced my parents to confront the reality that their manipulation tactics had escalated beyond family conflict into potential criminal activity. The possibility of elder abuse charges provided external accountability that their family relationships alone had been unable to establish or maintain effectively. Dr. Martinez guided the conversation toward recognition that all family members had been harmed by manipulation patterns, including Linda and Robert, who had become so invested in control strategies that they had lost sight of the difference between loving support and damaging interference. He emphasized that rebuilding family relationships would require acknowledgement of harmful behavior, followed by consistent demonstration of changed attitudes and respect for individual autonomy. The therapeutic framework helped family members distinguish between accepting responsibility for harmful behavior and engaging in shame or self-condemnation that would prevent positive change. Dr. Martinez explained that healthy family relationships require ongoing commitment to respecting boundaries and supporting individual growth rather than trying to control outcomes according to parental preferences or expectations. Jake's continued defensiveness and refusal to acknowledge his exploitation of family relationships demonstrated his unwillingness to participate in genuine family healing or relationship repair. His focus remained on deflecting blame and maintaining access to financial support rather than developing independence and reciprocal family contribution, revealing fundamental character issues that required professional intervention beyond family discussion. Linda finally broke her silence to acknowledge that their family relationships had become unhealthy and that their good intentions had been corrupted by fear about losing control over children's lives and decisions. She admitted that their manipulation tactics had been motivated by terror about family dissolution rather than confidence in family love and connection, leading to behavior that created the very problems they had been trying to prevent. Robert's acknowledgement came more slowly, but he eventually admitted that their approach had been wrong, regardless of their motivations, and that they had violated trust and respect that would require significant time and effort to rebuild through consistent demonstration of changed behavior and attitude toward family relationships and individual autonomy. The evening concluded with agreement that family relationships required fundamental restructuring with professional support to address manipulation patterns that had developed over years of unchecked behavior. Everyone except Jake agreed to participate in ongoing family therapy designed to establish healthy boundaries and communication patterns that would support individual growth while maintaining genuine connection and mutual care. 6 months after that transformative family dinner, my life had undergone complete reconstruction in ways I never could have anticipated. The process of establishing healthy boundaries and rebuilding relationships required consistent effort and professional guidance. But the results exceeded every expectation I had held about family harmony and personal independence. My living situation became the foundation for all other positive changes. I relocated to a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in a modern complex, 15 minutes from downtown, featuring enhanced security systems, covered parking, and recreational amenities that supported the active lifestyle I had been developing. The new apartment represented my complete independence from family manipulation, while providing space for genuine relationships built on respect and mutual consent. Emma and I approached relationship rebuilding with careful attention to honest communication and shared decision-making that honored both individual goals and partnership objectives. We attended couples counseling with Dr. Martinez to address trust issues created by family interference and develop communication patterns that would prevent external manipulation from damaging our connection in the future. Our renewed relationship felt completely different from our previous engagement because both of us had developed stronger individual identities and clearer personal boundaries during our separation period. Emma had been promoted to marketing director at her technology startup company, while I had received recognition for innovative software development projects that positioned me for senior engineer advancement within my firm. The professional success we both achieved during our separation demonstrated that our individual growth had been enhanced rather than limited by family relationship independence. We were choosing to be together because our partnership added value to already fulfilling independent lives, rather than because we needed relationship security to compensate for family dysfunction or personal insecurity. Jake's situation required the most dramatic intervention of all family relationship changes. After the dinner confrontation, he had initially attempted to continue gambling and manipulation tactics, but Patricia's threat to involve elder abuse authorities and my parents' new awareness of his exploitation behavior eliminated his support network for irresponsible lifestyle choices. Faced with genuine consequences for his behavior, Jake entered a comprehensive rehabilitation program that addressed gambling addiction, financial responsibility, employment skills, and family relationship patterns that had enabled his parasitic lifestyle. The program required 90 days of residential treatment followed by ongoing outpatient support and structured accountability measures. To everyone's surprise, Jake responded positively to the rehabilitation structure and began demonstrating genuine effort toward independence and responsibility. He completed job training in logistics coordination and secured employment with a regional shipping company that offered advancement opportunities based on performance and reliability, rather than family connections or manipulation tactics. Jake's transformation included voluntary participation in family therapy sessions, where he acknowledged the harm his exploitation had caused and demonstrated understanding of healthy relationship boundaries that honored mutual respect rather than one-sided dependence. His progress remained tentative and required ongoing monitoring, but his genuine effort created hope for eventual family relationship repair. My parents' journey toward changed behavior required the most sustained effort because their manipulation patterns had been developing for decades and were deeply integrated into their understanding of parental love and family responsibility. Weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez helped them distinguish between supportive involvement and controlling interference in their adult children's lives. Linda's growth became evident through her voluntary enrollment in a support group for parents learning to respect adult children's independence. She began developing friendships and interests that provided personal fulfillment without requiring control over family members' decisions, discovering that her own life could be satisfying and meaningful without managing everyone else's choices. Robert's change process focused on financial boundaries and transparency that eliminated opportunities for manipulation through money management or inheritance pressure. He consulted with a financial advisor to establish clear inheritance planning that respected individual family member preferences rather than attempting to influence behavior through financial leverage or obligation. Both parents demonstrated their commitment to changed behavior through consistent respect for boundaries I had established around apartment access, financial privacy, and relationship decisions. They asked permission before offering advice, respected my responses regardless of their personal preferences, and focused conversation on my well-being rather than their anxiety about my choices. Kelly successfully relocated to San Francisco, where she accepted a creative director position with a sustainable fashion company whose environmental mission aligned with values she had been developing during her period of family relationship examination. Her distance from daily family dynamics allowed her to maintain loving connection while pursuing personal goals without interference or pressure. Patricia's health and happiness improved dramatically once family manipulation pressure ended and her financial security was protected through legal consultation and documentation. She developed friendships within her assisted living community and pursued interests in local history and genealogy that provided intellectual stimulation and social connection, independent of family relationship management. The weekly dinners Patricia and I established became opportunities for genuine conversation about her life experiences, my career development, and shared interests in technology and social change that created natural connection without obligation or manipulation. Our relationship became a model for healthy family interaction based on mutual interest and respect. Emma and I announced our engagement during a small family gathering where everyone could celebrate our decision without feeling pressure to provide opinions or advice about relationship management. The engagement represented our choice to build a future together based on love and compatibility, rather than family expectations or external pressure. Our wedding planning process involved family members in ways that honored their caring, while maintaining our authority over decisions that reflected our values and preferences. The experience provided opportunities for everyone to practice healthy family interaction patterns that supported celebration rather than control. The life lesson that emerged from this difficult period centered on the fundamental difference between love and control in family relationships. Genuine love requires respecting individual autonomy and supporting personal growth, even when choices differ from parental preferences or family traditions. Control masquerades as love through manipulation tactics that prioritize conformity over authentic relationship connection. Family relationships become healthy when every member feels free to be honest about their needs and boundaries without fear of rejection, manipulation, or emotional punishment. Trust develops through consistent demonstration of respect for individual choices, rather than through enforcement of family loyalty expectations that suppress authentic self-expression. The most profound realization was that protecting myself from family manipulation was not selfish, but necessary for authentic relationships with people who genuinely cared about my well-being. Setting boundaries eliminated relationships based on exploitation while strengthening connections with family members who could love me without needing to control my life choices. Recovery from family dysfunction requires professional support and sustained commitment to new behavior patterns, but the rewards include relationships characterized by genuine affection, mutual respect, and individual growth that enhances rather than limits personal potential. Healthy families celebrate individual success rather than viewing independence as threat to family unity. Understanding these principles helped me recognize that the security camera discovery had been an opportunity for family healing rather than just crisis management. The evidence had provided necessary truth that enabled everyone to address harmful patterns that had been damaging relationships for years without recognition or accountability. The lasting impact of establishing healthy family boundaries extends far beyond personal relationships to professional confidence, financial security, and emotional well-being that supports continued growth and positive contribution to community relationships and social responsibility. Have you ever experienced family members crossing boundaries in ways that made you question whether their behavior represented love or control? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and sharing it with others who might benefit from understanding the difference between healthy family support and manipulation tactics. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building authentic relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope you find the courage to establish boundaries that protect your well-being while maintaining connections with people who truly support your happiness and success.